Parshas Bereishis, Netziv, speaking about the Pasuk Vayar Hashem Ki Tov, explains that the Rebbeinu Shalom put into the sense of vision, seeing something that was not in the other senses, that it brings to hitpalut, it brings to internalizing and acting, hitpalut, brings about action. A raya ledova, as evidence, Moshe Rabbeinu is on Sinai. He hears from the Rebbeinu Shalom that the Jews have made an egel, and he waits till he comes down and sees, and then he breaks the luchas. Because the hitpalut didn't come until he personally saw it. No credibility gap, he heard from the Rebbeinu Shalom. It wasn't seeing as believing. It was another mechanism in the human personality that seeing brings about a necessity to act upon what one has viewed. Medrash Rabbah on the spot in Parsha Kisisa Shvuyas Haluchas, the breaking of the Luchas, says that Moshe Rabbeinu waited, he heard from the Rebbeinu Shalom, went down, in order to teach Dayanim in the future that if it's possible to see for themselves, they should wait to act until they see for themselves. There's Eidos, there's Rov, there's Chazaka, we have all kinds of halachic norms, an entire world of halacha on how to act when we can't see. But if you do have the option of seeing, wait until you see. Such is the lesson that we derive from Moshe Rabbeinu's waiting, says the Medrash. He heard from the Rebbeinu Shalom, it's clearly true, they've made an egel, and he has, it would seem from the Medrash, he has the hispilus. He does have, there's no difference. The only reason he waits is to be instructive for future generations. The Sforna says that Moshe Rabbeinu on Sinai had the idea that there's an egel, they made an egel, but he didn't witness that they were doing it b'simcha, b'tupim, and mechelas, dancing and singing around the egel. And when he saw, he witnessed that it was b'simcha that necessitated traumatizing them to extricate this internalization, because simcha brings to internalization. We find a lot of the Gedolei Chassidus bring this svana as a raya to the maila of simcha. There it happened to be a negative, something ra, the egel. But in a positive context, simcha works in the same manner. Simcha is a medium, and it brings about internalization, whether it be for good or for evil, and that's already the choice and the context. So, we have the Netziv, the Medrash, and the Sforna. There's some sefer, the beginning of Parshas Dvarim, quotes a Medrash. Medrash asks, why is it necessary for the psukim to give us all the geography of where Moshe said what? This was in Chatzeres, this was in Dei Zohov, this was Midbatzin. Why do I need the geography? Says the Medrash, question of the Medrash, answer of the Medrash, that Moshe Rabbeinu waited until his elderly years to give teichocha. Why did he wait? Because a zoken is less suspect of having an agenda. And therefore he has more credibility. So that's the upside of waiting to give teichocha samach lemisasai, when he was already old. There's a downside, though. What's the downside? Downside is they could write him off. It was senile. Didn't know what he was saying. He wasn't with it. So in order to obviate, to head that taina off, Moshe Rabbeinu cites all of the geography. This I said to you here, this teichocha over here. And by indicating the places that it took place, each location with accuracy, then he dismissed any possibility of writing him off as having lost it. That's the Medrash. Kasha and the Teretz in the Medrash. Esther Sam Sefer, we have psukim later on that Moshe Rabbeinu leinos leichai lekei einai, he had all his faculties. He was youthful, and he seems to understand the Sam Sefer that it must have been a davar poshut, that it was clear and evident that he was youthful. So then, how could there be such a havamina that maybe he lost it? So the Sam Sefer is bothered by how could the Medrash have such a havamina? Continues the Sam Sefer. There would in the future be a Novi Yirmiyahu. Yirmiyahu witnessed Churban Bayis Rishon. He warned, he railed, to no avail. According to the psukim in Yirmiyahu, the break into the city in Bayis Rishon was on Tes Tammuz. Bayis Sheni Yud Zayin. We fast Yud Zayin. Tua brings that a Bal Nefesh Yachme al Atzmai fast also Tes. But we're not matil two Tainesim, one after the other, on the tzibur so close in proximity, Tes and Yud Zayin. Very straightforward, that's the Babli. The Yerushalmi comes along and makes a mappecha. Tesis brings the Yerushalmi, and Yerushalmi says Bayis Rishon was also Yud Zayin b'Tammuz. The Ferish Apostle says Tes. Bayis Rishon was also Kilkul Cheshbainas Hoyakam. The devastation, the suffering was so intense that they lost their calculations of the dates. Some Sefer explains by that. The Novi says it was Tes. Some Sefer explains that the Novi, the Ribboni Shloim, instructed him, even though at the moment of Nevuah he understood the mistake, but the Ribboni Shloim said, write it down according to the mistake, and that'll be a barometer for future deiras how bad the devastation was. How do we know then it was Tes? Wasn't Tes, that it was Yud Zayin? Because our Maseres teaches us that Bayis Rishon was also Yud Zayin. Continues the Chassam Sefer, so there's a machlekes between the Babli and the Yerushalmi. But according to the Yerushalmi, Bayis Rishon was also Yud Zayin. And he got confused. Even somebody of that caliber wears two hats to Novi. He's an Ezrach min Minyan. He's subject to all of what happens to Klal Yisrael, all that suffering and pain. But then at the moment of Nevuah, he transcends that, he's elevated above that. But the Rebbe Shem says, write it down according to the mistake. Says the Chassam Sefer, Moshe Rabbeinu saw all of the poronius that Klal Yisrael would have ad seif kol haderes. Or ad hayam achron, Chazal darshan ad hayom achron, till the final day. Says the Chassam Sefer, that's what the Medrash means. Yirmiyahu lost the cheshbon because he witnessed by his rishon. Moshe Rabbeinu witnessed by his rishon, by his sheni, the Inquisition, Humaneki, every pogrom in history, saw all of the tzaras of Klal Yisrael throughout all the deiras. So there might be a havamina that Moshe Rabbeinu would in fact also lose the thread. He would get confused. There might be such a havamina. So Moshe Rabbeinu is coming. His faculties he had. That's been kaimai. But Yirmiyahu also had all his faculties. But since Moshe Rabbeinu was privy to all of the tzaros of Klal Yisrael throughout history, there could be a tzad that he would get for tumult. He'd lose it. Therefore, the Medrash is saying he did not lose it. Chatzeres, Dei Zohov, Midbapon. Continues the Chassam Sefer. But Bemet, how come Moshe Rabbeinu did not get confused? Yirmiyahu got confused, and Moshe Rabbeinu did not. Imagine many of you are thinking, like I first thought when I first saw the Kasha and the Chassam Sefer, a fundamental difference. Yirmiyahu lived through it. Moshe Rabbeinu witnessed it in Nevuah. Maybe that's only virtual. Maybe there's a difference. You don't get overcome if you're only witnessing it in Nevuah. That was my first reaction, but that's not what the Chassam Sefer says. The Chassam Sefer does not take that route, which surely, obviously occurred to him. Chassam Sefer says instead, Moshe Rabbeinu also witnessed the Geula. He witnessed the ultimate Geula because Ad Hayom Achron, which includes the Geula. All of the suffering, pain up to that point, but he saw the Geula. Yirmiyahu Novi knew that there's going to be a Geula, but he didn't witness it. If you witness the Geula, then you have an added tolerance, a shock absorber, seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. You can handle it, so you don't get for tumult. Yirmiyahu knew it, but he didn't see it. By him, there was kilkul cheshbainis. Why, bemet, doesn't the Chassam Sefer take the more obvious teretz to say Yirmiyahu lived through it, and Moshe Rabbeinu only saw it in the Nevuah? Kanireh, the Chassam Sefer, it's a double poshit, that the Nevuah of Moshe Rabbeinu, Aspakalya Me'ira, that unique Nevuah, which is specific, particular only to Moshe Rabbeinu, that is the equivalent of living through it. There's no difference between Aspakalya Me'ira and living through it. Therefore, the Chassam Sefer has to come on to the teretz of Moshe Rabbeinu witnessing the Geula. Otherwise, the simpler teretz was available. Imkain, and we find no indication of any differentiation of Moshe Rabbeinu one time had Aspakalya Me'ira, one time not. So Moshe Rabbeinu hearing from the Ribbani Shalom that Klal Yisrael had made an egel on Sinai, Aspakalya Me'ira, then everything that pertains to that was there at that moment. Then he wouldn't go like the Svalna. He knew it was B'Simcha. And he surely wouldn't go like the Netziv to say that only when he came down did it come to a state of hispilus. That hispilus was there Lamala. Everything was there Lamala. It's the equivalent. It's experiencing it. If this was an introductory class at Osameach, I would say it was existentially evident. But since it's not, I won't. It was clear that it was the same experience as seeing it later. So why did he wait? Well, you could say like the Medrash. The Medrash says it was to be instructive for Dayanim for future Deiros. Didn't have to wait. For him, it was the same thing. But it was in order to give a message, perhaps similar to the Lashon we find early on in Bereshis, that the Rebbeinu Shalom Chazal teach us, Nase Odom, it's in the plural, the editorial we, but it means it's to teach you the Rebbeinu Shalom is Misyayitz with Bezdin Shalmala. Rebbeinu Shalom doesn't have to be Misyayitz, it doesn't have to take counsel, but it's to be instructive. So sometimes things are done, Torah teaches us do something, though it's not necessary for you, but for future days, for others, for mankind, for Klal Yisrael. There's another possibility. The Meshech Chochmah is not addressing this question of why Moshe Rabbeinu waited. He just wants to know, why did he break the luchos? What's the point in breaking the luchos? Must have been something pedagogic, didactic, some lesson here. Says the Meshech Chochmah, brings the Rambam that the mistake of Ovdei Avodah Zarah began with really thinking of the Rebbeinu Shalom Kavayochol in human terms. You get out there, you'll start doing Kiruv, you'll say anthropomorphism. Attributing human limitations to the Rebbeinu Shalom. And a human CEO has to delegate authority because he can't handle an overload on the antenna. So he gives this division to this executive, that division to another, and delegates authority. But then, after a time, people want to ingratiate themselves to those delegates because they have a certain amount of room, they have a certain margin for maneuver, and they usurp more and more, and after a time, it's treated as if they're in control of their division. That's the way Avodah Zarah began. The Rebbeinu Shalom, thinking of it anthropomorphically, appointed division heads, delegates, and each one began to usurp and demand and attract more and more devotion from those who needed that division. Eventually, it becomes as if it was autonomous. There's nothing at the moment of Kabbalas Haluchos in the Bria that is holier in the physical universe. Nothing that is holier than the Luchos. Luchos, the first Luchos, the Rebbeinu Shalom carved the Oisius, the tablets, the Oisius. It's Omed Benes. That moment, the greatest rebuttal, the greatest squelch of Avodah Zarah is to take the holiest thing in the material world and break it. And to show, to demonstrate that there's nothing in the Bria that's a necessary prerequisite for my interaction and my relationship with the Rebbeinu Shalom. Preferred? Yes. And he continues the Meshech Chochmah. Most of our history we're going to be without Eretz Yisrael. We're going to be without the Beis Mikdash. Are they preferable? Of course. New dimensions, other dimensions, unique to those situations. Kedushas Haaretz, Beis Mikdash, Kohanim, Leviim, the Karbonos. One of the problems with Yuzayim Tammuz was the bittul of the Talmud, but not a necessary prerequisite. We have a game plan for Golus. There's plan A and there's plan B. The Rebbe Shem made a covenantal pact with the Avos, with Avram, and restated with Yitzhak and Yaakov that Avram in the Bris Ben Absalom chooses Golus rather than Gehenna. That should expiate the guilt, the failures of Klal Yisrael in history. And so, we need a game plan for that Golus, and we have it. We have a game plan. There's lechatchilim b'diavad. And we can make it throughout history to this finish line. Some of you have heard me tell the story that I came into a sociology class one time. It was the first day of class. Many years ago. Instructor was matching the faces with the names. I was the only fellow with a yarmulke in the class. There weren't that many yeshiva bochum bechlal in Brooklyn College at the time. Later, one guy once said to me, he thinks that you need 128 credits and 613 mitzvahs to graduate Brooklyn College. But this was before that period. And I was the only fellow with a yarmulke, and this instructor turned to me and he said, "Excuse me, Mr. Schiller, what are you doing here?" I had my jousting matches with various instructors. This was the first day, unlikely that somebody tipped him off. I said, "What's your problem, Mr. Waterman?" He said, "Well, you must be a student of the Talmud." I said, "I am." He said, "Then I have nothing to teach you about sociology. The greatest sociologists of all times were the Talmudists. If they could keep a dispersed people identifying as a nation over a few thousand years, then anything I might teach you about sociology you've already learned." I told Mr. Waterman, I could put you at ease. I have no intention of learning anything. I just want 3 credits for the course. We got along wonderfully after that. But he was right. We have a game plan for Golus. The Chatchila, no. But b'diavad, we have a game plan. That's the message in Shviras Haluchas. Im Kain, if that's true, then who had to get that message? Klal Yisrael. So who had to witness the breaking of the Luchas? Klal Yisrael. And again, the Psukim emphasize, Moshe Rabbeinu says, that the Luchos Sheshavati le'enei Yisrael, le'eneihem, that they had to witness it. Moshe Rabbeinu up on Sinai, Aspakalia Meira, had all his spilas. Nothing was missing. You can go like the Medrash, and say like the Medrash, that to be instructive. Or you could say, using the Meshech Chochmah, that since the whole point was to teach this message, this lesson to Klal Yisrael, they had to witness it. Therefore, there was a necessity for them to witness it. And then, Taka, for them it applies what the Netziv said, that seeing brings to his spilus. This idea that seeing brings to his spilus, Talmu uru, taste and see. Seeing then is more than just, it's used for not just sight, but tasting it, experiencing it. It becomes as real as seeing it. Shem Mishmuel points out in the mitzvahs of Mitzera, talks about the idea by the Sira Mishtaleach that in each case, by the Metzera, you have a chatas. One tzipor is chatas, another is sent out to the soda. The chatas represents the asay toiv. The one you deicha, you push away, that's a Sumeira. But David HaMelech is later to say Sumeira v'asei tov. You should preface your asei tov with a Sumeira. That way, as it says in Svarim, there's no pnius. You don't have the subjective bias of how you're expediting it. It should be a purified, sterilized asei tov. Must be preceded by Sumeira. But says the Shem Shmuel, there are times you can't afford that luxury. You have to start with the asei tov. Mitzvah. He's already obviously guilty, otherwise he wouldn't become a mitzvah of certain infractions, lashon hara, whatever. Siyah mishtaleach, a similar situation. First the chatas, and then the siyah that you push to azaza. Some sefer use a lotion. Sometimes a person is so ill that the first order of business is to bring him back to a level of health that he can feel pain. He's so ill he doesn't feel the pain, but he has to get to a point where he can feel the pain so he can guide the doctors. Sometimes somebody is so removed from Ruchnius that Ra doesn't speak to him, so there's no Sumeira. You have to break in the middle. Asei tov. Shem Shmuel actually finds the source for this hanhoga in Yaakov Avinu's switching of the bochas for Ephraim and Menashe. Ephraim represents the Asei Tov, Hifrani, increase, even though it's in the land of the exile. Menashe is Noshani, help me forget all my toil and my pain up till now. That's the negative. So Yaakov Avinu, who wrestles with the Malach of Esav, Yaakov Avinu, who is Mesake in Tfilis Ma'ariv, he's preparing us for the Golus battle. How are you going to deal with Golus? You're going to have to, at times, be mechadish that asei tov and give it precedence over the Sumeira. You can never condone a Sumeira, the Ra, you can't condone Ra, but you can concentrate on giving priority and emphasis to the asei tov. I'm sure that, and I later found the Bnei Yisoscha says, as I've always been sure, that that's the reason he doesn't switch around Ephraim and Menashe. If you want to give the bracha to Ephraim, why don't you put him on the right and move Menashe to the left? I've heard a Musa Dikater, so people said it would have been more embarrassing. I'm not necessarily convinced of that, but surely if it's only a Hoyro Shor that we're giving this emphasis to the Tov, the message is we're coming back to doing it the other way. Eventually we have to get back to Sumeira v'asei tov, so Menashe stays where he is. The asei tov is a facilitator for Tammuz. Helps expedite personally internalizing a certain amount of experience, every positive experience, every mitzvah that's done. Surely this is what's happened over the last 45, 50 years in what has come to be called the tshuva movement, is that by giving people more of an emphasis, it's an easier gate of entry, for some of re-entry, because I'm not being mevatel myself. Rav Hutner, Zeichet Tzaddik Levacha, I remember him saying in the Sukkah, invariably, people are more successful with the asei tov than they are with the Sumeira. because the Asay Tov is an extension of me, of my ego. I am doing it. I am giving the tzedakah. I am learning the Mishnah. Sumaya is constriction, tzimtzum, as opposed to ispashtus in the language of the Bali Kabbalah. So therefore, psychologically, that's the way it works. I don't remember Rav Hutner saying it, but the Gra says it, so obviously Rav Hutner knew the Gra. He probably did say it at some point. Ani yeshena v'libi er. Yeshena in Gematria is 365, those are the negative mitzvahs. Ani yeshena, I can be asleep to the negative mitzvahs. V'libi is 48. Er, you take the reish from er, that's 248, and the ayin is asay, 248. Ani yeshena, I can be asleep for the mitzvahs lois asay, but I can be awake to the mitzvahs asay. Again, never can we allow ourselves to be understood as to sanctioning any kind of breach in any kind of halacha. Here the question is emphasis. Where do we put the first opportunity for entry? We put it in to have another positive experience, have another positive experience. Then it's that person, him, having the experience. And by him having the experience, he then is absorbing that. It's his hispilus, his internalization. And we work from a premise that I had a Schiller for many years. Posuk, we say 3 times a day. We quote, you should know it today and then internalize it into your heart. But it doesn't say v'samta bilevovecho or alevovecho. It's another discussion. It says v'ashivosa, return it. Return it means it was once there. I once asked my chavrusa, one of the Kiri Yerushalayim, Rabbi Yosef Tzendler, Zecher Tzadik Lebrocha, how come the word sechvi means rooster, but it also in Eov means lev, it means heart? What's the connection between the rooster and the heart? And he said the maila of the rooster, the gever, is that he anticipates the dawn before we can validate, we can prove it. It's before the dawn is visible. Similarly, the heart intuits certain truths. We're talking about Jews, that the neshamas were at Maimon Har Sinai, all the neshamas. Those 600,000 core neshamas were at Sinai. And as a tzaddik explains, that many of the neshamas today are fractions, certain percentage of a core neshama. Like the lettering in the Torah corresponding to it also can be combinations of letters. But that experience, that core national experience of partaking of Sinai, all the neshamas of Klal Yisrael were there. Intuition, you can be led astray because the heart has many ritzenos and needs. So it needs a filter. So step 1 is it's there. Step 2, but there are conflicting needs. I saw somebody, Medayek, Elokei Aruchos L'Kol Bosa, that Bosa is man's need for indulgence. Elokei Aruchos, Ruch is that which has him able to transcend that need. leadership in Klal Yisrael has to be ish ruach, ish asher ruach boy, that he has become so removed from his subjective needs that he can transcend that. So one of my grandsons told me a discussion that they were having, some bochrim in the yeshiva. So one bocher said to the other that Rav Steinman learns in one day what you learn in a year. And he eats in 1 year what you eat in a day. Ish asher ruach boy. These kaiches, the Rebbeinu Shalom put into Klal Yisrael, they're dormant. They're there to be awakened. For you and I to get to the point where we're sufficiently discerning that we know who the leadership is. To blindly say, well, I guess he must be the leader because look how many people are following him. We know that can't be true from history. It has to be that knowledgeable people, discerning people, have cast their ballot for that leadership. From Moshe Rabbeinu till today, that has been the structure of Klal Yisrael. And there are moments in history where we have to help guide our brothers. Meredek the Yukim B'nai Yisoscha makes Sheftim, Sefer Sheftim. They ask who should go up to lead the battle against the enemy. Say Yehuda, Shevet Yehuda. Then Yehuda invites Shimon to join. What's up, it's Yehuda? You're told that you can do it. Deserves seeing inside. Yehuda represents the Seder of the Degolim and the months. Yehuda represents the month of Geula of Nisan. Of is time of the Chubonos, beginning this period now, climaxing in Tisha B'Av. But Losed Lovoi, Zechariah is told it's going to be a day of Simcha. So Yehuda wants to involve and engage the month that represents Churban together with the Gula, to bring Av in connection, to have it coalesce, to have it merge with Gula. So there are times when Shimon represents our failure. Talk more about that in Yez Hashem, Tisha B'Av. If Mashiach comes between now and then, hopefully he will, then we can still talk about it, but in a different way. But that month and that merging, this month, Tammuz was Keneged Ruvain, the Fidesz Cheshvan of the Degolim, and the Fidesz Cheshvan of the Degolim, that coming together. It's the month in which the Meraglim saw most of their report and misinformation that they reported. Of Shmiya Keneged Shimon. Ri and Shmiya have to come together to bring about that matzav of personally experiencing Tamuru, that we have to be the facilitators for each individual Jew. Approximately 45 years ago, when Osamech began, it was theoretical. many people said can't be done. Most people. Gedali Yisrael that we went to said you have to try. The average person that we spoke to said can't be done. You won't get Talmidim, you won't get staff, and you won't get funding. Okay, 45 years later, 2 of the 3 problems have been solved. Gentlemen, to get from 0 to where we are today was b'derech hateva a lot less probable than from where we are today to reach thousands and thousands more of Klal Yisrael, that we have to be mechaber them, connect them, Yehuda to Shimon, the Geula to the Churban, and obviously the witnesses are there. Shem Yazor, that we should see b'mehera b'yameinu b'yis haGeonim.